So while some of you are getting settled in, I'm gonna start explaining what we're doing today. You'll see on your table. Hey, hello. We're getting started. So while you're getting settled in, I'm gonna explain what we're doing today. You'll see on your table very small printout of some example pumpkins. I thought these were really fun because they're really colorful. Some of them have three different colors like yellow, green, orange. And then some of them are very warty and bumpy. And you can paint the warts. I've done a small version of what we could be doing today. This is just a kind of a diagram, but in one of my classes earlier today, we did this. And this one, I think everyone had a lot more fun with than trying to do this one. Attitudes? Oh, yeah. I painted some really curly stems there. This was an earlier version, but I like this one better personally because there's a lot of colors and contrast. So we'll practice some of the techniques that are involved with making this one, and then we'll go ahead and paint this larger one. So everyone should have one small sheet about this size and then one larger one. We'll start with the smaller one for our warm-up. And does anyone have any questions before we get started? Great question. So I know for I think all of our or most of our previous classes, not all of them, we've just been painting straight on the paper without any sketch. And I thought it'd be a good idea to practice more sketching this time. So you have a chance to outline everything before you paint it in today. And I'll show you the step by step. I have already a little bit right here as a preview um, for the drawing here that we're gonna do. Any other questions? Good question. So I would recommend the rougher side. Some of them are rough on both sides and some are rough on just one. The rough is nice because I mean, it's actually a matter of personal preference. If you like that texture, it'll show up in your painting. On mine, I don't know if you can tell, but there's a little bit of that paper texture right here. You can see some darker spots. So if you like that, use the rougher side. If you want it to look smoother, the smoother side would be better. Although on the smoother side, sometimes the differences in color show up even more. You can experiment and try it out. Even on the small sheet, I think it's the same effect. It might be the same. I think this is rough on both sides actually. But yeah, you're welcome to try either one. I've only been using the rough side for my paintings. So to get started, oh, any other questions before we go? Those are good questions. No? Okay. I'm actually gonna start with just taking a deep breath. If anyone wants to join me, sometimes it helps me get settled in. Okay. Now on this smaller sheet, you can see this one I did as a sample. I think I actually need another one to do this on. I'll do it on the back side of this paper. So to practice this technique, what you see here is some really fuzzy or rough lines that have bleeded out or have spread out. We're gonna aim for this kind of effect with our lines here. This is really nice for the pumpkins that are warty or that have a lot of texture. And if you don't want it and you want a hard edge like this one, you just need to wait for the first layer to dry before you put the second layer on. But this one's a little bit trickier, so we'll practice this one. I will show you how to do it, and then you can try it yourself. So first, I'm going to pick up, maybe I'll leave this guy here for reference. First, I'm soaking my brush in the water to pick up a lot of water. If yeah, let's use the bigger brush for this one. Bigger brush, and if you really dunk it in there and swish it around, sometimes there's so much water in here it'll drip. You can use just about that much water to start creating this reservoir we're going to make. The color I'm going to use to start with is this yellow orange. It's right next to this very orange. It's in between. This one looks like a peachy color and this one looks like a deep orange. It's in the middle of those two. I'm just gonna swish back and forth here to collect a lot of pigment and then store it in my palette, which is the lid. Maybe in one spot right here. And I'd like you to notice how watery this is. It's watery enough to where if I tilt it, it'll start to flow. That's how much water we want. Most beginners will use too little water and then it won't spread at all. You can tell when it's not enough when you put it on this palette and it doesn't move, really. You want to see it flow a little bit. That's a good amount to start with if you've got something about this big. Once you have this reservoir, you can rub your brush back and forth in here to pick up that paint. But if you look at it closely, your brush is probably looking pretty plump like mine. This is actually a little bit too much paint for what we're using, so I'm gonna push this against the ridge and it releases maybe a drop of 2 of paint. And now this looks less plump. That should be just enough paint. Let's see how it looks on here. We're gonna paint just a loose oval shape. Oh, and one thing I should point out about the difference between the rough side and the smooth. The rough side is more absorbent, so the paper will stay wet longer compared to the smooth side. I'm using a smooth side right now. And with this oval, I think on mine I have a little bit too much water and I can tell because it's pooling a bit on one side. If that happens to you, you can take a paper towel, fold it up and just use a corner to dab that puddle. It should even it out. We're looking for something more even and not puddling. And about that wet, so this will probably stay wet for a few minutes before it dries. Maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. And for this effect that we're practicing, we want it to be wet. If for some reason yours is dry, you can add water and paint over it again, like so, to add water or re-wet it from it drying too quickly. And once you have this circle, I would switch to the smaller brush. We were just using this bigger one. And go directly into, after you get some water on that brush, go directly to this orange that's right next to the yellow orange. And if you were to put this directly on your palette, this is much drier. You can tell because it's not moving at all. I don't see much water there. That's actually the consistency I'm looking for this time. Something pretty dry. Because the more dry it is, the less this will spread. And when I make this line right here, it won't spread out much, but it's still soft if you look at this up close. So for this orange, we're looking for more dry. This is very, very dry right here. And then once you have that orange in your brush, and it looks like the right level of dryness, you can put it directly on this circle, oval, and hopefully it's still wet so it'll spread a little bit like that. This is still the wet on wet technique we've been practicing a lot, but a little bit more refined in that we're looking for something that's not super wet where it doesn't blend a lot. And let me know if you have any trouble with this. It can be kind of tricky to get the right amount of water. And you can use this sheet to practice this a couple of times. It's good. That's a good start. Yeah, you definitely have the wet on wet there. Now all you need is less water on the with the orange. Yeah, that's a good start. It's gonna take some finicking around to get the level that you want. So that's why you can see on my left sheet here, I practiced it a few times. You have some space up here. I would just leave maybe some space on the bottom half to practice a small pumpkin. But you can use the rest of this to keep practicing this technique. And especially if this is your first time doing watercolor or first couple of times, this may seem like a lot of information. So just allow yourself some time to practice and try this out. I'll paint another one here. And repeat what I just did just in case you want to hear it again. So loose oval shape, and remove any puddles, because the general rule of thumb is the more watery it is, the more it'll spread or blend, and the less watery it is, the less it'll blend. If it's completely dry, it won't blend at all. So you want to control how much water you have on your surface and in your brush to get the effect that you want. This one is, I've got an even sheen here. Can tell from tilting it in the light. Now I'm going to add my dry orange. I get this dry orange from dipping my brush in the water, but then drying it out a bit before I pick up the orange from the palette. And this time I have a lot more pigment, I think, than the first time, so it's showing up more. So if you see yours spreading a lot more than you'd like to, just on the next one, aim for less water. And if yours isn't spreading at all, then make sure you use more water, or apply the lines before the first layer dries. Do a few more here. And you might notice on yours, but definitely on mine, wherever I pick up my brush, it leaves a splotch. That's because my brush is a little bit more wet than it should be, or than I want it to be. So in that case, I could dry it off on a paper towel and then try again. That's better. This one's not splotching as much. That drop at the end is from water dropping onto the paper from lifting it up. I'll give everyone some time to play around with that and try some things. Does anyone have any questions or want any help? Hey, you got it. On these ones. Yeah. Would you like any help? Oh, wait, you're getting it right here. The wet on wet. You can see the edges are fuzzy here. Yeah. One way you can tell is if you kind of tilt it until you see a reflection. Yeah. So what I do to see how wet it is. Hi. Are you joining us for watercolor? Awesome. Okay. I can show you what we're doing up here. Right now everyone's practicing a bit of a technique. Oh, hi. Kind of. These are the printout is just some examples of what you could do. And if everyone wants to follow along, we'll be doing this one. Right now we're practicing a technique. Yeah, with on the smaller sheet of paper. And I'll walk you through it and everyone else you can hear it again for learning. Okay, so I'm using this yellow-orange color right here, using lots of water, making an oval. And this has too much water on it, so I'm gonna soak that up with a paper towel. Dab it a little bit. Now this looks even. Everyone, you can pick up your paper to see how dry it is, and tilt it until you see a reflection or not. I'm always looking for that reflection to see how dry something is. And when I'm afraid to touch the paper, I'm like, my face is all over the place trying to get a good angle. Now I'm adding orange. Very little water where it looks pretty dry. And adding these stripes. Okay. I'll give everyone about another minute or so to keep practicing this part. Remember, if you're stuck, you can just shout out, "I'm not getting it," or you can say, "Help," and I'll help. Sometimes it's a lot easier to see it in front of you with your own eyes versus from the screen. How the paint's working. Okay. That minute's up, so I'm gonna show you how to draw the pumpkin. I have a simple step-by-step here. And you can look at this printout for some reference. There are a lot of wonky shapes on here. Some of these are squash and they're really long. Some of them look boxy. Some of them look like trapezoids. The shapes are all over, but I'll try to do this one that I did here. The general steps for drawing, I recommend. You can really draw it however you want, but I think this way makes it really simple. Number one, I would outline the overall shape. So if you've got a gourd shape, something like that, and you've got your eraser if you want to make any adjustments. Let's say I want to make this a little bit more round. So number one, that outline. Then two, I would recommend putting in the stem next because it helps establish where the center point is. So there's the stem. And then finally, the vertical lines that follow the curve of your pumpkin. This will give it a more three-dimensional effect. My tip for that is to imagine if you have lines evenly going all the way around. The ones that are further away or more on the sides, if you imagine even like a globe, they're closer to the edge. And overall, the lines will be closer to each other. So for the ones on the very edge, you can make them really close like that. Let me zoom in here. And then as they get closer to the center, let them be more spread out. I think maybe you'll only need maybe 4 lines as you draw this, but the more you can make that curve go outward on the outer edges, the more round it will look. I think one common mistake that people make when they're doing this is everything is evenly spaced out, and then it looks very flat. Here's an example of something that's evenly spaced and too straight. So we want that curved look here. So to apply that to the pumpkin, I would do the outer lines first, really close to the edge, and then do the center ones. This one can even make do with 1 line right here if I want them really spread out. But I could also have maybe about 2 inside there, something like this. Just make sure the ones towards the center are more spread out than the ones near the edge, like that, something like that. Oops. This could go up a little bit higher. And you can follow this guideline or this framework for all of the pumpkins, no matter what shape they are. Even the tall ones have that too. So if you haven't already, you can go ahead and sketch one of these on this smaller sheet, and then we'll practice filling it in too. And that's tricky. I think sometimes getting the round shape or rounded effect is a little challenging. Ooh, ooh, okay. I see the gourd shape that everyone's got. Well done. Okay. Then when we practice painting on this one, it's the same principle as this, um, except for if we were to do this one, it's just different colors, and we're following the contour line that we just made. One thing is, I should mention, if you drew this very dark with your pencil, it might show through. It all depends on how dark the paint is that you use. If you don't want it to show, you can lightly erase it, just enough so that you can still see. Ideally, I think I'll bring in some supplies for you next time where there aren't all these eraser shavings. We'd be using kneaded erasers for this. But if you have a paper towel, you can use it to wipe off those shavings. And if you need more paper towel, I can come around and give you extra. Typically, I would just sketch lighter, but since I'm doing a demonstration, I'm drawing it darker to make sure you can see it. I think I can give y'all some paper towel for this eraser part. Need 8 of these. Just in case you want something to wipe away the eraser shavings if you have them later. Here's an extra paper towel. You're welcome. Hey, this is extra for wiping stuff. You're welcome. It looks like everyone's got the sketch done. So let's go ahead and apply the paint. I'm gonna let mine be fairly dark on here, then you'll see how it shows through. You can kind of see it on this one already. So for this pumpkin, I used the same yellow-orange that we used here for the base layer. So what I would do is just fill in this whole shape with that yellow-orange. That's this one right here. This is the same technique. We'll just use green instead of orange for the lines, and then fill in the stem too. There we go. And just like what we did for the practice, we'll um, pick a darker, different color, this in this case the green, and make it fairly dry compared to that initial layer. I would use either one of the greens is okay. They're pretty similar and they're on the corners, opposite ends of each other. I'm gonna try using this one, see how it looks. And feel free to make swatches. If you're not sure how your color looks, you could just make a spot on your paper as a test. This is a swatch right here. That looks dark enough to me. Also, you can see how dry it is. I want it dry just like the orange I did earlier, so it's not moving much on my palette when I apply it on here. Not really flowing. That's what I want. So while this is still wet, it's actually already starting to dry. I'm going to trace that line I drew, or the lines that we drew for the contour here. And if you want to give it some texture and imply some warts, you can add a couple spots close to the line. And then you'll have this effect where you've got these fuzzy lines and fuzzy blobs. If you have too much water at this stage in your brush, it may spread a lot more than this. And if yours is drier, it's not going to spread much or at all. I think for this one, I am using the one across from the white. So this one right here. This is a dark green. I think I wish I added another line here. It looks a little bit better to me. You want to make sure you add this, if you like this fuzzy line effect, make sure you add this while the first layer is still wet. If yours already dried, you can re-wet it by just putting the paint on top again, the yellow-orange, before you put this green on. How's everybody doing? Got the lines. Would anyone like me to demonstrate on their paper? Ooh, that's fine. No, there's no wrong way to do it. I'm just showing one way to do it if you'd like to follow. I even say in class you can paint something else if you want, or you can paint whatever you want. But I'm here to give guidance if you want to follow something. You can paint a jack-o'-lantern face on it if you want. Yeah, it's your art. For the stem, what I've been using is a mix of green and brown. These two work just fine. It's the brown next to the black and the green across from the black. If you mix those two together, you get depending on how much of each you use. I'm aiming for something that's more of a greenish brown, so a brown color with a green tinge. It'll look something like this. Army green. Yeah, well, actually it's more brown than that. And I'm gonna make a swatch here to see how it looks. If I thought this was too dark, I would add more water. And if I thought it was too light, I'd add more paint. But I think I like how dark this is, so I'm gonna use it and just put this on top. And that's how to do the pumpkin. This small sheet now is your test sheet, your swatch sheet. Anytime you want to see how a color looks before you put it on your painting, you can make a little spot or mark just to see how it looks. You can practice shapes on here too, or brush strokes. In a moment, I'm gonna move on to the larger piece here. And we can draw these pumpkins together. Does anyone need more time to play around with the smaller sheet? Nah? Okay. Let's give this a shot. So I'll guide you step by step on making this piece here. It's essentially a larger version of what we just did and a few different sizes. If you don't want to follow this one, you can arrange these pumpkins however you'd like. I have an example where I drew some that were kind of like in a row and then stacked on top of each other. You could do that instead. Maybe I'll leave this here for reference. But for today's class, I'm going to be doing this one if you want to follow along. I don't know if I can get this to fit. This is an idea. Okay, so to draw this, I'm going to start with what's in front and then move my way to the back. The front one can be roughly on slightly on the left side here. It's about yay big. It's an oval. I'm leaving a little space on this side to make sure I can draw the next one over. Let me actually make it about that big. Pumpkin-like shape. If you see one on here that you like, you could draw that in too, or instead. That's my first one. And then I'm following the same steps that I did earlier. Second step is the stem. As a guideline, you could just do one line and then make it thicker later if you like the curly part. So what I did here is one big loop here and then maybe another one right there. Looks like a string right now. With that stem, you can either leave it as this line and use a thick brush to trace it to make it thicker, or if you like having that outline, which might be a little bit complicated, you don't have to do this part. I'm kind of adding a little bit of space on both sides of this line. This becomes 3 lines. I'm gradually making it thinner and thinner. If that's too tricky, you can leave it the way it is and just use a thick brush later. After you finish the stem, then we'll do those, I think that's longitude when it goes up and down. Those lines, vertical lines on the top of this pumpkin here. So just like before, I was recommending that the lines on the sides are very close to the sides. And I also recommend making them more round. I'm going to start with those. Let this overlap a little bit. And then make these more spaced out. This has more of the illusion of roundness. If you want these ridges to show, you can make these stick out some. That's pumpkin number 1. And then the next 2 are the same, they're just a different size. So taller and more narrow, and then even taller and even more narrow for the third one. For this second pumpkin, I'm making it about as the height is around the middle of the paper, maybe a little bit higher. That's one way you can kind of eyeball it. A little bit more than halfway up the paper. And I like to use my pencil as a measuring stick a lot of the times. Helps me see how things are, how big they are or how small. So now I'm outlining another oval shape for the second pumpkin, letting it go behind the first one. There's another swirly stem. I'm trying to spread this out more. There. I'm gonna add these lines outside of this line to make it thicker. This is optional. You can leave it as a single line if you prefer. Am I going too fast for anybody? Is that laughter a yes? Okay, not too fast it looks like. And I think after you've done these 2, you've got a good idea of how to do the third one. It's the same thing, just bigger. We'll do it here. When we get to the coloring or painting part of this, you can choose what colors you want. This was just a combination I picked because I thought it looked nice. But that printout has a lot of different ideas. Oops. Print out. I think I'm gonna do something slightly different from my sample here and make this one a striped one when I get to the coloring. Maybe something like this. Let's spread this out more. When you're done with your sketch here, you can do exactly what we've been practicing. So establish one layer, then add the lines. If you like the fuzzy lines, you can do it, or you should do it while it's wet, that first layer. And if you want these hard edges, wait for that first layer to dry before you paint your lines. I'm gonna show how I came up, or how I made this color. It's kind of a creamy one because I used white. I mixed it with a little bit of the orange. So taking that yellow orange that we had earlier, I'm gonna add white to it from this palette. This white is gonna get messy, but that's okay. It's really easy to clean it up. If I use enough of it, this will turn into a creamy, very creamy light orange. You can see it transforming on my palette. Because we're painting a lot bigger, I'm gonna need a lot more paint too. So I'm gonna make a larger reservoir of paint right here than what I did earlier. There's that cream color. I still have eraser shavings on here. Okay. When I apply that, it looks something like that. I'm gonna fill in my drawing here. My lines are gonna show through because I left them kind of dark, but I don't mind. And I want to make sure this stays pretty wet. I'm gonna pick up my paper and tilt it to see how shiny it is. I think I already have a dry spot right there, so I'm gonna add more paint to that spot. Okay, now I don't think I have any dry spots. Before it dries, I'm gonna add orange to make the orange line. I'm gonna try using the smaller brush so that my lines aren't too thick. And this orange is gonna be relatively dry, just like before. If I want it to spread more, I'll add more water to this color. Oops, I didn't want that. Yeah. This pumpkin is based off of this one right here, and I like the texture of some of the spots in the photo, so I'm gonna try to add some of my own by adding a few marks. Following this line, contour line. Oops, extra spots. And if you want to add a little shadow, you could add just a touch of brown to the bottom edge here. I did that on this one. That's optional. I think actually this yellow ochre would work well too. Yeah, this yellow ochre, which is next to the yellow and the very light orange. If you apply this while it's still wet, it'll blend a bit. If it's dry, then you'll just get a hard edge. And just like before with my stem, I'm gonna mix a dark green with the brown for, oops, for this color. And I'm filling this in now. If you're Just tracing the line you have here, you can press down with your brush until it spreads out the bristles to the width that you like. So if I were to do that with this brush, I'm using the smaller one, pushing down and it's spreading out. It might be a little hard to see because it's so dark. It's spreading out like this. And then to make it thinner, I'm gradually lifting the brush. This requires kind of a steady hand. I rely a lot on resting my wrist on the table to keep it from shaking more. And when you get to the pumpkins in the back, because we're painting fairly quickly, this might still be wet, so I left when I did it here, I left a white gap between sections so that they wouldn't start to mix with each other. This is my outline. That's what you can do if your paint is still wet when you're applying the next color. If it's already dry, you can paint it right to the edge like I did here, right here. But what I would do is work from front to back. So the second one I would do would be this one. And you can copy the colors that I have on here if you like to, or you can try a different combination. Would anyone like any help? Yeah, sounds like it. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Do you want to add a third one up there? I've never seen someone combine winter like Christmas with Halloween like that. It's very creative. Well, I mean, you could continue and finish adding the lines on here. Yeah. One thing I usually mention in my classes is that watercolor is extremely difficult, and a lot of people consider it the hardest painting medium to learn. So the fact that you're here and painting, I think, is a huge accomplishment. It's because the water can be difficult to control, but after some practice, you'll get a feel for it. You'll start to notice what's too much, what's too little. And I've noticed with students who've painted with me for several months, they do get a hang of the technique and they do improve. It does take practice. Yeah, it took them several months of actually, I think, weekly classes. Here, I'm only here twice a week or twice a month. I would say let yourselves play with the paint, and if it doesn't look the way you want, just pay attention to what you need to adjust for next time. Is it more water, more paint, less paint? Do you need to let the paint dry more to get the effect that you want? Or do you need to have it be just less wet overall? Those are all the things you can pay attention to in terms of the water control. It's the level of wetness and the timing which you apply the paint. Those are things you can adjust with using paper towels to dry things out. That means you can dry your brush out on the paper towel before you put it on the painting. That means you can dip your brush more often into the water so you pick up more water. It's a constant tweaking. On top of that, you're also practicing drawing, which is a whole nother skill. So that's another thing to consider too that you're working with. It's not just the paint, you also are learning how to draw the shapes that you see. And starting out, that doesn't look the way that you imagine in your head. So art is it's a skill that takes a lot of practice. All right, so for this one, oh no, I've got low battery. Low power mode. Low power mode. Low power mode right here. Oh, no worries.
It's beautiful what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming by to say hi. Yeah, yeah. I'll see you next time. No worries if you can't make it to class. I miss people, but y'all are busy. On my sample here, this second tallest pumpkin, it's spread out a lot because I used more water when I painted the line. So I've got to use more water compared to the orange line here if I want it to spread more. So I'm doing that right now. I added a bunch of water to my brush and now it's spreading like crazy. That's that. I'm just gonna add another extra line here. Same principle or same color for the stem here, brown with green. And I'm just repeating this process for the third pumpkin, just different colors. For this last one, I'll do a light green and dark green pumpkin. It's gonna look funky. Maybe it'll be yellow. I'll do yellow. Yellow and green. Does anyone have their own watercolor set at home that you play with? Yeah? If you decide to practice at home, one thing you can do is just practice the blending technique with simple shapes like squares or circles and just adjust the amounts of water or paint you use with each shape you make. Maybe each one can be two colors. You can practice making a smooth gradient. That's one thing I've done as an exercise, just to practice controlling the water and the paint. If anyone wants homework, that's what you can do. I've in my sketchbook I have pages where I've just done um, like circles or rectangles over and over again, practicing the gradient. So I would have pages filled with just these simple shapes. This big pumpkin here needs a lot more paint because it's a lot bigger than the rest. I might run into the problem of it drying before I get to the lines. If that happens, I'm just gonna re-wet it by putting more paint on top. Let's see how wet this is. Yep, yeah, I've got a dry spot on the top part. Okay, I'm gonna go in with really dark green lines. If you want something really dark, you could add black. Oop. I think I'll add black to the center of these lines for more contrast. Another thing to remember about watercolor is that it always dries a bit lighter and duller than how it looks when it's wet. So you can keep that in mind as you're painting. What I do is I'll paint it a little bit more saturated and a little bit darker than how I want it to be when it's dry. And so by the time it's dry, it looks more like what I'm looking for. There's no such thing as too much fun. Okay. We're officially at the end of class, but if you want to keep painting, you can stay and keep working, or if you have the time. Almost made it this time. I'm gonna stay a bit to finish this. I think I like my first painting better. I just I'm not sure how much I like these stripes here as a design. We'll see how it looks when it dries. But I wanted to try it to see how it looks. Sometimes I'll try something, I'm like, I don't like it. I'm gonna try something else next time.